Hello again, my name's Elizabeth and I like to sew smart, and today I thought with Mother's Day coming up here in Australia and in other parts of the world, it would be nice if we made a Mother's Day lap quilt. So get together your scraps and all of the things because you'll need them for the cup, cakes, gift, flowers and the hearts for love on this lovely little quilt. We'll get started right now. I've only used scrap as we're working out of our stash, out of our cupboards, and I don't really want to buy anything, so it may look a bit of a pickle with colours, but I think that's the nicest thing because children for Mother's Day make pasta cards and everything, so I think this is nice. Now I have got some cream background fabric, which I've got a fair bit of, so I've cut for each block a 7-inch square, and I have cross cut that into the 4 triangles. I have got the pleat, which is just a 1-inch by 7-inch strip, as long as it's as long as that side on that block, and I have pressed it in half, and there are 4 of those because they will go around before I put the triangles on. There's a 6.5 inch, so there's a 7-inch block in the cream. You need a 6.5 inch block, so for the 4 blocks you will need 4 7s and 4 6.5s. And I have cut out from the pattern, from scrap, the applique that I'm going to put on. I have just drawn on there the stem, but there's an iron off pen, a friction pen, so if I've got that a bit wrong I can always change it. So I've cut all my applique pieces out. And do remember, you can keep tiny little pieces as small as that with your Visifix on, and you can cut anything out. Don't throw anything away when you're doing applique. So my next thing with this first block is I'm going to take the paper backing off of the applique pieces, nice sticky back, and I'm going to put them all in place on the block. And the block, remember, is on point. So applique paper off, press them on in the position you want them. There is a picture in the pattern for you to follow, so that's my next step. I've ironed on my applique. You can turn it any which way you want. Now I have got an iron off line on there, but I put the line on, as I said, so that I could get my leaves in position properly. So now at this point you can either applique all your pieces on, or I prefer to now do the next stage and then applique a slightly bigger block because I think it carries more weight and I always find the outcome is better. So the next step is you're going to take one of your 1-inch strips, which has been pressed in half. We're going to put it along raw edges. Make sure it sits on your raw edge. Take one of the triangles from the 7-inch block and put that on there as well. Let me just pull him along there. Pin it, and using a 1/4 inch stitch, I'm now going to sew along this edge, catching in this little pleat, and I'll come back when I've just sewn 1/4 inch along that edge. I've stitched along using the 1/4 inch stitch, and I've just pressed that nice and neatly back. Now the one thing to remember is you're going to go onto the next one, onto that one and onto that one, but if you wanted to, you must remember to do every block the same if you can, but if you're going to do it, you could do it a different way. You can put that one on and that one on first, because now I'm going to put, make sure I've got the raw edge side proper, that one, right sides together again, going to put that one on there, pin it, and I'm going to stitch this one on next, and then I will go all the way around this one next and this one and press it all out, and then I'll show you the finished piece. But if you want to do something different, put the opposites on and then that one on, and you'll find you'll get the same fold in your corner, whereas this way you get a different fold in each corner. I've stitched all 4 sides on, and you've got that nice little complete there. Done them all the same. Now I'm going to applique on my pieces now, but this block has ended up 9 inches square, but I want it to be 8 3/4 because I need just quarter of an inch there and a quarter of an inch there for my seam allowance and there. So I'm going to I'll applique my pieces on now. I will repeat this process for the remaining 3 blocks, of course. Then I will applique the pieces on, cut the blocks back to 8 3/4 inches square. I've trimmed my blocks back after I've appliqued my pieces on. I use a small zigzag purely because I used to use buttonhole stitch, but I use the small zigzag. I find it's harder wearing than the buttonhole stitch. And I've triple stitched just the line for the stem down there, just using a triple stitch I've got on my machine. So I cut them back 8 3/4, and there I have 1/4 inch seam, and I've got a 1/4 inch seam there. Now you will note that it just cuts off the edge of the square, the frame, but that is because this is a flap and I want that tight and down. I don't want it left where it will catch. I've repeated it for the other 3 blocks. Now to put them together, I've actually used the tea and cakes, treat for Mother's Day, the flowers and the gift, which is something really nice. I'm going to stitch them together. Again, I've got the 1/4 inch there and there and there and there. Now that will form this plain cream block in the middle, and in that I'm going to put just the hearts. I'll put it probably the other way around. You can jiggle it around to how you want it, but just put the hearts for the love for Mother. The hearts in the middle I've appliqued onto this centre cream square that's been formed by those other squares. Now you will see that this has come together really well here. Your points come together nicely, but it does get a little bit bulky because it's got all these thicknesses. So what I've done is I have pressed this seam open and flat. That makes it a lot better. I'll just put that back. See, it gives it a nice, when you're quilting you don't want too much bulk under your seams. And now on to the next step. The center panel of your quilt now will measure 17 inches square. Trim it off if you need to, but leave your 1/4 inch seam all the way around. And the next step is we're going to put a border on. Now I'm using scrap, so I have cut some strips of 2 inches that I've had from this scrap fabric, and I've sewn one already on so that you can get an idea of how this is going to look. I've cut some strips, 2 inch strips. I've picked out a colour from this square for that corner and this square for this corner. But how you'll do that is you will stitch your strips together, press the seam open, right sides together, and line it up with the seam that you've got there, just like you've lined up everything else. You'll line this seam up. I've lined this up here, and then you will stitch each one on using your 1/4 inch seam again. Press them well out. Start with the left and the right, and then do the top and the bottom. That's because these top and bottom ones have to be slightly longer. They're going out over this strip that you've just put on. My first border is all nicely stitched on now. Very, very neat it looks. And it's 20 inches square now. So that's my first border. Now for my final border, I'm going to use this same background fabric. So I have cut, because it's 20 inches, remember, square, I've cut 4 pieces 20 inches by 6.5. They will go round the top here all like that. But to start with, you've got to stitch the side borders on first, and just pin this one, right sides together again. Make sure you get right sides together, pin it and sew it on with 1/4 inch seam, and then I will come back and I'll show you how to do the top and the bottom. So the sides are on and they fit perfectly. Now you've got the 20-inch strip on the top here, but you need to put these two onto this strip in order for it to fit on the top and for the squares to coordinate with each other square. So what you do is right sides together again, you will pin and stitch 1/4 inch, lining it up. Press the seams open, by the way, when you've put these side pieces on, just press the seams. You can press them left or right. This one goes this way, so you would bring this seam here in the opposite direction so that they fit really snug. So you're going to pin those squares on either end and then sew them onto the top and put the other two on the bottom piece and sew them onto the bottom. So I've got my top lines on, the bottom lines on, and it's all looking very nice. The only thing that remains for me to do now is to quilt it. I will sandwich it with some wadding and backing fabric, and then I will bind it in this nice red here to bring that red out to the edge. And then we'll be finished, and then we have a Mother's Day quilt. So this is my quilt finished. I have stippled on the background in the center square, all the backgrounds. Haven't done the applique because it's quite firm, quite stiff with the adhesive on. And I have stitched in the ditch around the framing and just straight quilted 3 lines down each side panel and across the corners, and bound it with the red, which has come out very nice. Now you can back it with anything that you have left, and I think it's a really nice quilt to give on Mother's Day. So you have, as I said before, got the cup of tea in bed, you've got the cakes for morning tea, you've got the bunch of flowers, and you've got the gift, and it's all done with love. And that's a quilt 32 inches square, just for Mother's Day. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and do remember, give us a thumbs up and subscribe because that does help. Go along to the Etsy shop because the pattern is available there for this quilt and for lots of others that I've done. And next time I'll be doing a new project, so come along and join me then.